This is Virginia Foxx, representative from North Carolina for the 5th District, with a congressional update. There's always a lot going on in Congress, but we've been extraordinarily busy recently with the appropriations process and with dealing with our debt and our deficit. And I invited to be with me today the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, Congressman Jim Jordan from the 4th District of Ohio. And I wanted to get him to explain about the Republican Study Committee and also what's happening with the debt and deficit and other things that are on the minds of so many people in the country. So, Congressman Jordan, please tell our viewers a little bit about the Republican Study Committee, or as we say, the RSC. Everything gets abbreviated around here. What does it do? What is your role? And then we'll talk a little bit about the debt and debt ceiling.
Yeah, the Republican Study Committee, in simple terms, is that conservative bunch of folks on Capitol Hill who are here to stand up for the principles that the Republican Party is all about. I tell folks, the modern Republican Party is the party of Ronald Reagan, is really about 4 things: strong defense, lower taxes, less spending, and defending traditional values. And our job is to wake up every single day and fight for those principles. And I should mention, we also have this nice lady from North Carolina who's a member of the Republican Study Committee who does just that, who gets up and fights every day for those principles. And so I thank you for that leadership.
And tell me a little bit more about the current issues that you're dealing with as chairman of the Republican Study Committee. You're in your first term. Actually, the chair of the Republican Study Committee only has 1 term, right?
That's right.
I think the founders set a good example by saying we want people to do this for 1 term and 1 term only. And you're elected by the founders and by the previous chairs. And you've been a great leader. So talk a little bit about what you've been working on. And then, if you would, talk a little bit about the challenges that we're facing with the debt ceiling right now.
It's all about the spending, the out-of-control spending that you know is taking place here in Washington. So this whole Congress has been about trying to put us on a fiscal path that actually makes sense, one that will secure a bright future for our kids and our grandkids. Because obviously the path we're currently on is one that is simply not sustainable. And I won't go into all the numbers, all the huge deficits we've been running each year and the debt we've been piling up, but I'll just do one. We currently spend $200 billion a year in interest. Within 10 years, remember, interest rates are record low, historic low right now. They're going to go up. So if they just go up modestly, over the next decade, we will spend more in interest, year 8, 9, or 10 down the road. We'll spend more in interest payments to service that huge debt than we currently spend for national defense. More to service the debt than we spend on defending the country. Everyone understands that's simply a model you cannot sustain. So we at the RSC have been focused on, let's put in place those things that will actually fix the country. Let's cut spending now, let's cap it going forward, and let's actually work on a balanced budget amendment. This in particular in the context of this debt ceiling debate, which is dominating Washington right now. Let's put in place a cut, cap, and balance plan that will actually fix the situation, and as I said before, secure a bright future for our kids and our grandkids.
I want to diverge just a minute. Sitting here looking at you, I know that you're a father, a husband, you were a wrestling coach, you're a wrestling star, a runner. You know, our opponents try to portray us as a bunch of crazy people. And it occurred to me, when you think about the RSC, we have Sam Johnson, who served more time as a prisoner of war in Vietnam than any other person. He's in the RSC. Sue Myrick from North Carolina. I can't name, but
Sue's a former chairman.
That's right. But the people that are in the RSC, as you say, we represent the grassroots of this country, don't you think?
I think so. And those basic fundamental principles that I think make our country great in the first place. We believe in keeping taxes low, not just because it's good for the economy, but mostly because it allows moms and dads to keep more of their money to spend on their kids and their grandkids and their goals and their dreams. We believe in cutting spending because not because government can't help do certain things, and there are certain things that need to take place, but because we understand you can't keep spending more than you take in. And just basic principles, respect for the sanctity of human life, respect for family, that key institution, all those basic values. That's what the Republican Study Committee is about. And we have a record high number of members this term, 176 members. So we're engaged in this debate, trying to make a difference for the families and taxpayers across this country.
Right. And people want to get in to be a member of the RSC, and I think that's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about the debt and the deficit. You know, those terms are used a lot. Let's help explain to those who might not know the difference. Talk a little bit about what is our debt in this country right now, and then let's talk a little bit about the deficit.
Well, in simple terms, deficits are the annual shortfall you run each and every year. And currently, the last 3 years, we've had record annual deficits, over $1 trillion each of those years. So successive years.
The first time in the history of the country.
First time in history of this country, first time probably in human history, a nation has run over $1 trillion deficits each year. We've done that 3 years in a row. And all those cumulative deficits produce the national debt, which is currently a little over $14 trillion. Everyone understands when you start to get that high of a debt and you keep spending more than you take in, it's simply a model that cannot be sustained, and that's why we have to make changes.
And the federal government's taking in $2.2 trillion a year. Is that about right?
Yep.
But we're spending $3.6 trillion a year. So that helps put it in perspective for people also. We are bringing in money, and we are talking again about the debt ceiling and what will happen. So it isn't as though when we hit the debt ceiling that we'll have no money.
Right.
We will be, tell me it's
about... Revenue will continue to come in, and frankly, in the month of August, this is something that the President's been doing in this debate, which I think is just not appropriate for the President of the United States of America, for the President of the greatest nation in history to stand up and stand up and scare senior citizens and say that there may not be money for the Social Security checks in the month of August. The truth is this: revenue still comes in, as you point out. In the month of August, there will be enough revenue to pay the bondholders, to actually service that huge debt we have, pay Social Security recipients, and make sure our troops who are defending our nation, the men and women who wear the uniform of our country and are defending our country, there's enough money to make sure they get paid as well. But after that, the President may have to prioritize. He may have to make some decisions. He may have to lead and actually make some tough decisions. But to get up and scare senior citizens and say if the debt ceiling is not raised by August 2nd, that there won't be the revenue there to do certain things is just flat out wrong. There will be, and the President will have to lead and make decisions. But you're exactly right. Revenue will come in.
The President hasn't presented any plan. Is that correct?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Right. Republicans have put forth plans. We passed a budget in April. That is a plan. It takes a while to bring us to balance, but that budget brings us to balance.
Yep.
We would have a balanced budget in this country. Again, it takes a while to do it, but we get on that path.
Right.
The President's budget never balances.
Never
is
does.
that correct?
That's exactly correct.
Yeah. And I'm not on the budget committee, but so I rely on you guys to help keep the numbers in our heads and present them. But we are presenting positive alternatives, and I think you're right. I think that the American people, for the first time, are really engaged in what's going on in this country and are paying attention to the words like deficit and debt.
Yep.
And tell the American people, though, how they would be affected if we don't do something about this debt and about this deficit.
No one knows for sure, but you can look at what's happening in Europe right now. You can look at nations like Greece and Portugal and Spain and Ireland who are having big problems, and what happens with interest rates in those countries and a whole host of other things. So no one knows for sure, but what we do know, and Americans, as you point out, rightly point out, they instinctively understand that the course we're on is wrong, because they have to live within their means. Think about what we're putting forward as our cut, cap, and balance plan. And the balance part of that is a balanced budget amendment requirement. For the first time in American history, pass a balanced budget amendment in the House and the Senate, send it out to the states for ratification. Never happened in American history.
It's an amendment to the Constitution.
Amendment to the Constitution. And the President said last Friday we don't need it. The White House has been working to somehow say that this is irresponsible to balance the budget, and they're working hard to dismiss it because deep down they know it's the right thing to do, and they know the American people get it. And the reason it's the right thing to do is because everyone else has to abide by a balanced budget requirement. Every family, every small business, every township, every municipality, every county, every state. The only entity that doesn't have to abide by a balanced budget requirement is, oh, by the way, the one that has a $14 trillion debt, the federal government. So this is something whose time has come. And I really believe we're at a an historic moment where if we take this case to the American people over the next couple weeks, give them a chance to see our common sense plan. Because I would argue this is not a Republican plan, this is a common sense plan. Cut spending, cap it, get a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Once they get to see that, they're going to rally behind that, and we will have a chance to actually change history and fix this country.
Well, I agree with you. I think this is a defining moment. This country is known for its freedom. We know it's the greatest country in the world, and we don't want to become like Greece or the countries overseas. Greece has become the poster child for it, but other countries are facing the same situation. And our freedom basically depends on our being fiscally responsible.
Sure does.
Think about it, even again with families or with businesses, you see when they're fiscally irresponsible what trauma they go through. And everybody's seen that. They've seen people have major problems. We don't want that for this country, do we?
Sure don't. And again, I think the folks around this town who are so quick to say, oh, you can't get a balanced budget amendment. The Senate is controlled by the Democrat Party. You're never going to get it through. If you always listen to the conventional wisdom, nothing greater, nothing of significance, nothing of meaning would ever get done. History is all about the underdog winning. History is all about defying conventional wisdom and doing those big, bold things that actually change the course of history and actually accomplish something of real magnitude. That's the kind of moment we face now. And if we just keep taking the truth to the American people and we keep standing strong, good things can happen.
And talk about something big and bold, which the president has spoken about. He talks about $4 trillion in cuts, but he does that over a 12-year period of time, which the Congressional Budget Office can't score, of course. He's presented no plan. He has nothing in writing. He talks in generalities. A big, bold plan is a constitutional amendment.
Well said.
It's cut, cap, and balance. That's the mantra. We've all had little trouble saying that. But the big deal is the balanced budget amendment. That is the big deal. And it came within one vote, 1985, is that correct? 1995 came within one vote of passing. But our colleagues have said, oh, it's messing with the Constitution. Well, I tell students, I tell any group I talk to, the Constitution is the basis of all our law. Congress hasn't been able to do this in the past, and since it hasn't done it, why don't we try this?
It's a great. I think in many ways it's the only thing that can save the country. And you're right. The president has yet to put any specific plan on the table. And what he keeps saying is this: we don't need the balanced budget amendment, even though we all know that's the one thing that'll fix it. He's saying, let's raise taxes now and have spending cuts later. And the American people say, wait a minute. We're not falling for that again. That's old Lucy and Charlie Brown the football. We're not falling for that again. Let's do something that's going to work. Cut, cap, and balance.
Thank you so much, Congressman Jordan. I thank you for your leadership with the RSC and for explaining this issue so succinctly and so eloquently. This is Congresswoman Virginia Foxx with a congressional update. And with me today has been Congressman Jim Jordan, 4th District of Ohio.